All right, we left off part one. It was 2011. I'd been diagnosed for maybe about 2 years, and I had taken prednisone initially, and Remicade didn't work for me, or well, I had a reaction to it, so I couldn't take it. And I was on a maintenance drug. I don't know if I was ever in full remission, but I was at least in clinical remission. And I had kind of left my doctor because he was hard to get a hold of. Their office just seemed kind of unprofessional. And I had said before I was a little naive, and I kind of felt like I don't really need this guy. I've got this thing figured out. I was also they had put me on a gluten-free, dairy-free diet, which I slowly started adding things back, but I was still gluten-free, and I was having very little dairy. Probably yogurt, I think, was the only dairy products I was having on a regular basis. So I was still mindful of what I was eating, but nothing like insanely strict. And in 2011, I was in a really bad flare again, so I had to go find a new GI. And they were going to do a colonoscopy, but my blood count and blood pressure was actually so low that they weren't comfortable giving me the drugs for it. So I got to do maybe like a quarter to a third worth of a colonoscopy without any kind of sedatives, and that was very, very unpleasant. But it just goes to show in what bad shape I was in, and it was so swollen they couldn't go very far. I guess that was a good thing in some ways. But that landed me in the hospital for the first time with it, which was a little bit different because my symptoms, and I just thought my overall health was not really any different than it was 2 years ago. But again, this just goes to show different doctors are going to treat you very differently, or at least potentially they will. And they started me on prednisone again, only up to 40 milligrams this time. So on a relative scale, it was not that bad. I got the big fat head, kind of puffy cheeks again. And that was my driver's license picture up until just a few months ago, late 2019. So that wasn't very cool. And in addition to that, they put me on Humira, which normally you would take every other week. But he thought my case was so aggressive that he put me on a weekly dose, which over time I've found is like relatively unheard of. When I told one of my later GIs about that, he was shocked. He just thought like I would never do that to somebody. So maybe that would have been a sign of things to come, but I didn't know at the time. So I was taking it weekly. I was injecting it into my leg. The injection was pretty simple. I wouldn't really say it was ever painful. At worst, you would sometimes just hit a nerve, and you never knew if you were going to hit a nerve or not. And when you would, it would just kind of have that same reaction of when you hit your funny bone. You would just kind of get this numbness and just kind of, funny sensation all down your leg. And it was a little painful, but again, overall, nothing that bad. You might bleed a little, you might bruise a little. At least that's what I did. But as far as things can go, not too bad. So I've been taking that for a while, about maybe 2-3 months. That's when they first recommended surgery, but I wasn't convinced that that was enough time to make that kind of a decision, because I remember when they gave me the pamphlets when I first took Remicade, they were saying it could take like 6 to 9 or even more months to really, really feel it. It takes time for everything to heal, especially the worse shape you're in. So I felt like if my case was really as bad as you say it is, I need more than 2 months on a medication to potentially see results. So I just continued taking it, and overall during that time, I would just say I was generally unhealthy. I was able to do a lot of things. If I had to put a number on it, I'd say on any given day I was maybe 60 to 80%, how I normally felt before. And there was really no rhyme or reason of better days or worse days. I just kind of pushed through as well as I could. As far as side effects, I didn't have any side effects right away that were noticeable. Like the day of the shot and maybe into the next day, you just feel a little sluggish and kind of tired or foggy, or like if you've ever had, like when you're kind of congested and you have a cold, and you just kind of feel that dizzy, and maybe your hearing almost makes you feel like you're underwater a little bit. Just the slightest sensation of that might last, the rest of the day or even a little into the next day. But again, on a relative scale, nothing too serious. So after about 6 months, nothing was really changing consistently. So they added methotrexate to the Humira, which I don't remember if I took that weekly as well or if that was biweekly. But that one also was an injection. It's a another type of chemotherapy and an autoimmune suppressant. So between the two, my immune system was very low. I did my best to not get sick. I didn't find that I got sick more often, but I felt like when I would get sick, just the kind of minor, kind of a runny nose or a little bit of a sore throat, cough, they would just linger and they wouldn't go away. I wasn't necessarily bedridden or unable to even do certain things at times, but it just seemed like at any given day, I would just have any of those symptoms would just kind of go through the, kind of like the sick seasons. So that was kind of a pain, but I didn't feel like it was too bad. At least not, they were never that severe. And also, it's used for treating lots of different types of cancer and autoimmune diseases. I think are the two most common uses, and there might be some other things that it's used for, but those are the common ones. And that was about 6 months into taking Humira. They added that one. They said they work better together in cases like mine. And then I went for another roughly 6 months, so about a year total on Humira, double dose, and then the second half of that also with methotrexate added to it. And over time, like, I was kind of right on the borderline of anemic and just a very low blood count, kind of right on the cusp every time I go in to get checked. And eventually my blood count started to drop rapidly again, and to the point that he made me go see a blood specialist. And they wanted me to do like an ultrasound. They thought my spleen was failing. And at this time, this is when I was first starting to kind of not want to be on medications anymore and try more natural routes or something. I still wasn't really sold on surgery because I felt like there was a lot more things to try. But I was also kind of losing patience with this whole doctor and his team. And eventually, when that happened, when my blood count dropped again, that's when I started to get kind of suspicious that maybe these are more having to do with the side effects. And I started researching some more of them and the spleen and all that, and it had to do with your immune system and the like regeneration of blood cells and all that. And I started to question, well, do you think it's all these medications you have me on that are dropping my blood count? And my GI, insisted, no, I've never heard of that before, even though I'm sure you've all seen the commercials for Humira, and it says that's what it's going to do right there on the commercial. So at this point, this guy's just lying right to my face. So I'd already kind of decided this was not going to be my doctor anymore. And I eventually took myself off of all those medications because at the same time, we had a family friend who was a nutritionist, and she had, just in talking to people, kind of word gets around. She'd heard that I'd been sick and I had Crohn's, and luckily she contacted me because at this point I was starting to a little bit more seriously consider surgery back in 2012, and she contacted me and told me about the specific carbohydrate diet. And looking at it, I was thinking that might be something that I could do. Certainly, give it a try before I, jump right into surgery. So I had started following that as closely as I could. It's hard to just quit and change everything, but I was able to do most of like my major foods that I was eating that were considered safe. And my thinking was like, if I could follow it at 75%, then maybe I would get 75% better and at least see some results. And I don't know if that actual number, worked, but I clearly was like almost overnight, the acute symptoms went away. Because it's like I wasn't really feeding into my body, things that were going to harm me. So I was thinking over time, maybe there would be some healing. And the next time I went into the doctors, maybe after about 3 weeks or so of being on the diet, or mostly on the diet, I went in there and everything was looking better. And he's like, "Oh, everything must be working now, like magic. Like after 6 months, is this going to magically start working?" So I told him what I'd done, and like he was just furious, stomping around his office like a toddler that like you've taken their toy away or put them in timeout or something. And by then I pretty much knew then for sure, like, this guy's not gonna be my doctor anymore. And his way of letting me know that was they just stopped calling me too, which I also thought was very unprofessional. A doctor is a very personal thing. You can just have a talk with them and tell them straight up that you're going to do something else. But I never even had that opportunity because he just kind of threw his little fit, and that was that. So I'll tell you more about the diet that I did next time. So hopefully you found this helpful. If any of you are on Humira, or maybe your doctor has asked you about Humira and you're a little weary, or methotrexate, that was my experience with it. So until next time, till the next round of my treatments and my drugs, I'll see you then.